Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Brother Saj, we are now live.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah. How are you, Brother Naseem? You well?
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Very well. Yes, yes.
MashaAllah. Yes, Brother Zahid will be joining us soon. This is the Let's Talk Show. Today, inshallah, we are going to be talking about quite an important subject. We're going to be talking about the misconceptions about Islam. This is a subject that we try to raise every year because it's quite important, especially with the times that we're living in, especially with Islamophobia on the increase, especially with the likes of Donald Trump in power, and especially with the right wing and the right wing media, behaving as way they do. So, inshallah, today we have two special guests in the studio, and we've not seen them this year at all. So they've been busy, and we've been busy as well. So, first of all, I'd like to go to Shaykh Waseem Ahmed. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for having me on board on the Let's Talk Show. It's always a pleasure to join you and inshallah Zaid as well. Brother Naseem with us today and Shaykh Bilal. But we're most of the time we're in Oldham on Fast FM, but it feels different today.
Yes, and how you been? How's your Ramadan been? What you been up to?
Alhamdulillah, beautiful, just engaged in the ibadah now in the last 10 nights, and we're doing online talks, classes, it's all, as you can see, this current climate situation has led us all to the screens.
Yes, mashallah. And we've also got Sheikh Bilal Brown, who we have on every year at some stage, and it's a shame we couldn't get him on any earlier. So Sheikh Bilal, how are you?
Alhamdulillah. Thanks for inviting me on again.
No problem at all. How's your Ramadan been? And you've been quite busy, I believe.
Yes, we launched a new initiative dealing with convert care and mentorship of converts, new Muslims, reverts to Islam.
And how's that going?
Yeah, alhamdulillah, very, very good. Yeah, a lot of positive response.
MashaAllah,
even outside of the UK. There's people ready to take the shahadas.
MashaAllah.
Well. So alhamdulillah,
fantastic.
A need.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, this is the Let's Talk Show. If you want to take part in the show, then you can watch this on the YouTube Let's Talk Show, and also this can also be seen on Facebook on the Let's Talk Show page, and also on the Revival Facebook page as well. So inshallah, today we are going to be talking about the misconceptions of Islam. If you want to take part, then please do send us a text message, and also we will have the phone number on the screen. That is 07801 951 501. If you are watching it, please subscribe to our channel, and also like and share, and and then let your friends know and inshallah take part. We've only got today's show and inshallah tomorrow's show. Okay, so let's make the best of Ramadan. So first of all, if I can go to Shaykh Waseem, if that's okay. I just want to start off because what we want to try to cover is, if we can in the next hour and a half, some of the main misconceptions that people have about Islam and they have about Muslims as well. So first of all, the first question that we normally get that people ask is, that Muslims believe in a different God. What kind of God do Muslims, is it the same God as our God? So Sheikh, if you can start with that, please.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, I can understand where the question comes from and why it's actually, I would say, a genuine question. It might sound like, there's only one God and it's the same one God of all, but I think the way people think or are made to think, and the climate, the media, and just human minds and cultures, it may seem like the Muslims are a different to the human race or something like this. That's not the case. A Muslim, as you see, Shaykh Bilal, yourself, there's people from England, there's people from Australia, of white, black, yellow, orange, whatever ethnicity, whatever skin color, and they all believe in God Almighty, which is in Arabic Allah, right? And it's the same God of the whole of the world, the whole of the creation, whether that was at the time of Moses and the Jewish people, or time of Christianity and Isa alayhi salam, or Jesus Christ, or any prophet, or any God for that matter. God for us as Muslims and for everyone else is the same and one God. We don't believe in a separate God for us as Muslims, and then there's another, whatever other people believe in, that's something else. We all understand that we believe in the one and same God. Of course, we're talking about monotheistic religions, We believe in the one and same God. We don't believe in different gods, one
Okay.
for us, one for them. No, it's one God for all. I think that's something that we should be clear, because I can understand people may ask that question thinking Muslims are different, because unfortunately there's a massively incorrect hyped stereotype of a Muslim having to be of a Middle Eastern ethnicity or complex, or this kind of thing, which is totally false. A Muslim can be from China, Chinese Muslims, right? Muslims can be from Malaysia, Indonesia, can be from Africa, can be from Europe. It doesn't make a difference. Skin color is not a factor in Islam.
Okay. Let me go to Shaykh Bilal, if that's okay. So is there anything in terms of what how Islam describes God or the Almighty compared to other beliefs, compared to other religions, for example, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Sikhism? So the way we understand God, is that any different to how other faiths or ideologies might do?
Absolutely. So we have a different conception of what God is that may be drastically different from other religions. We see that Christian Arabs, they use the word Allah as well to denote God. But our understanding of God and his attributes, these capabilities will differ somewhat from definitely the Christian view of God, definitely the Buddhist or Hindu view of God. They have a pantheistic view of God, where we believe that God is not in his creation, not everywhere in his creation, and he's free from any space, time, or matter. So we believe basically that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is transcendent from being like his creation, but also he is attributed with attributes as well of perfection. So that's a summary of our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Jazakallah. And then a lot of people also might have a misconception that Muslims don't believe in Jesus. So what would you say to that, to that misconception, Shaykh Bilal?
It's clear from the Quran that Muslims who do believe in Jesus. He's mentioned by name 25 times in the Quran. Jesus, the son of Mary. There's a whole entire chapter devoted to his mother, Mary, peace be upon her. Even the Bible doesn't have a chapter devoted to Mary, but the Quran has an entire chapter of the Quran which is devoted just to the mother of Jesus. So of course we believe in Jesus. We just don't believe that he is divine, that he's God or part of a Trinity.
Okay, because some people have this idea that Muslims disrespect Jesus. What would you say to that, Shaykh Waseem? And where did this idea come from?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry, I'm saying that some people, have this misconception that Muslims disrespect Jesus, and they don't really give him that respect as they do to the Prophet Muhammad or the Prophet.
Okay, yeah, it's a misconception, of course. Of course, we respect all the prophets in Islam. As Shaykh Bilal mentioned, Isa, or Jesus in English, as we say, peace be upon him, is mentioned throughout the Quran, along with other prophets such as Moses, peace be upon him, and Ibrahim. So we respect all the prophets. Of course, we have a high reverence and a lot of love for the final prophet, the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So I think maybe some people think that because we talk more about our prophet and the final revelation, the final messenger, it may be that we don't have the reverence for the others, which is incorrect. We have full reverence, respect, love, and we consider them the best of all of Allah's creation. The prophets are the best of all humankind. Yeah, so it's totally a misconception and it's disbelief, I would add. It's blasphemous for us to disrespect any of these prophets. So that's something that I don't think any Muslim has ever could hold in their hearts. No, not at all. No disrespect for or lack of respect for any prophet.
Okay, and in terms of the belief that we have for the Prophet Muhammad, how does that belief in him differ to the beliefs that we have in all the other prophets, would you say?
Of course, we believe that our Prophet ﷺ is unique, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has preferred some prophets over others, not just the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ over others, but we believe Moses is better than most prophets, and so is Jesus. He's one of the most highly revered prophets. And this is a case of, in religion of Islam, and I suppose other religions, there's a ranking or virtuous nature of each and every individual. So we believe even amongst the companions, the followers of the Prophet ﷺ, there are certain virtuous, highly virtuous individuals, and there's like a order or a virtuous rank. But that doesn't deter from any of the companions or any of the prophets. So yes, of course, in our prophet, we believe he's the final messenger. So he's the last, and he seals the message of the previous prophets and abrogates their messages. So the final revelation and the religion of Islam is the true religion that now everyone has to follow. So we as Muslims therefore believe, in part of our actions or life, sort of we should be anyway, is that we call people to Islam. We want to spread the message of Islam in with wisdom, with hikmah, as the Quran tells us, and wise preaching.
Okay, and I think before we go into the different misconceptions, a lot of people, Shaykh Bilal, have this idea that that Quran is not the word of God, the Prophet Muhammad is not the final messenger of God. Some people throw a lot of allegations, that he kind of copied a bit from the previous text, and also that that the word of the Quran is not the true divine revelation, is something that the Prophet Muhammad himself might have written, or he might have actually copied from elsewhere. How do you go about kind of explaining that misconception to others?
I think we believe first and foremost that the Prophet ﷺ, he was truthful in his nature, and even his enemies, they described him as somebody who was truthful and of the highest level of veracity as well. And we also believe that he was supported by miracles, and these miracles have been witnessed by thousands of his companions and transmitted to us in a way that is totally undeniable. And we have reports from the Prophet ﷺ also predicting future events that attribute to his veracity. For example, he speaks about destitute, naked, barefooted herders of sheep will compete with one another in erecting lofty towers. This is one of the signs of the end of time, and many, many other signs that happen in the future. This increase of earthquakes, the increase of mistrust, that leaders, people who have no right to leadership, will be put in positions of leadership, and so on. And we're seeing a lot of these come to fruition. And the Quran is obviously the greatest miracle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And anybody who gives the Quran true reflection and a proper reading with an open mind should ultimately attest to the truthfulness of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yeah, and let me ask this question to yourself, Sheikh. Before you became a Muslim, I'm sure you were going through a lot of questions like this. Is Islam the true religion of God? Is Prophet Muhammad the final messenger of God? Is Quran the word of God? So a lot of people like myself who are born Muslims, who might not have, that opportunity to, do that research and study like you have. What was it that you saw? What was it that struck out to you that made you feel, hang on, this has to be the word of God. This has to be the final prophet of God?
I think, just the simplicity of the message and the monotheism that is in the Quran, and the fact that, it mentions all of the previous prophets as well. I probably thought before I became Muslim that, Islam has nothing to do with all of these other prophets that are in the Bible. But on reading the Quran, you see that actually, Islam believes in all of these prophets as well. Islam believes in one true God. Ultimately, anybody who has that monotheism and that belief in the oneness of God, they'll have a strong attraction to the religion of Islam.
Okay, Jazakallah. And a lot of people, I think that's a good point, because the other day, I think this was a few months ago, my son goes to me, in school we talked about Moses, and I go to him, well, Moses in the Quran. He went, no, don't be silly. I go, you sure? I thought it was just Prophet Muhammad. So I think with with Muslims, I think the issue might be is we don't really know what's in the Quran. We're not really sure that the prophets are in there, how many of the prophets are named, and the stories are similar to what's in the Bible, what might be in the other books as well. So Shaykh Waseem, when we hear about the Quran, Shaykh Bilal answered that in terms of the prophecy. When people throw a lot of allegations in terms of the Quran, that it's out of date, it's not up to date, it can't be the word of God, it's kind of 1400 years old. How can a book that's 1400 years old, how can I follow it today? And then there's allegations where it might be copied, from other texts. How do you, when you're thrown this question as a scholar, or when you speak to non-Muslims, what's your way of trying to answer this misconception?
I think very important aspect of the Quran is to understand the approach to the Quran. We have to understand that it was revealed in a context. It was revealed over a period of 23 years. These are some of the basics, but I think people don't actually know that. They don't know that it was revealed on various circumstances, in response to questions, in response to problems, issues, over a period of 23 years. 13 of those years being in Makkah, with a different kind of situation of oppression for the Muslims and difficulties and having to deal with a lot of problems from society, and then 10 years of that being in the Medinan society, where there was a lot more political power and it was a lot more rules were engaged, laws were enacted, and this kind of thing. So there's a context, without a doubt. The second aspect of approaching the Quran that I think is very important and crucial is, although it's in those 23 years, and although it is with those contexts and those sort of reasons of revelation and stuff like this, it is a book of guidance. It is a revelation that addresses all human beings, and that's the one. I think that's a miracle of the Quran, which is not even touched upon, how it was actually revealed as part of the 23 years of the life of the Prophet ﷺ and his companions and the world at that time. And yet at the same time, it serves as a book as guidance for mankind, and you can read it as right now and just it addresses you almost, it engages you. And that sort of initial approach is something very important to understanding the Quran. If you come into the Quran with the kind of premeditated attitude, I'm going to find a fault with the Quran, then it's not for that person. You're going to just have a bias that's always going to influence or take you away from the truth of the Quran, or even accessing the truth. And this is how a very big problem. So an open mind is required as well, and this willingness to accept and learn. I think if we take that approach, whether Muslim or non-Muslim, I think we learn a lot more from the Quran. We actually, like you said, we'll be quietly surprised at how much is in the Quran we didn't even realize is there, and how much is not in the Quran that people somehow make as part of the Quran. Shaykh Bilal and I probably get questions, he says, in this the Quran, and we're scratching our heads like, I've never come across this in the Quran, right? It's like, where people get this from, Muslims and even non-Muslims, of course, but even Muslims say it like this. So there's a lot of education needed around the Quran.
Okay, Jazakallah. I'm going to bring Brother Naseem back if he is there, and he's busy doing all the text in the background, because Brother Naseem is also a young scholar as well. He says he's not, okay?
No.
Mufti of London, Naseem.
MashaAllah, good to hear.
Yeah, and Brother Naseem always talks about that the Quran is the manual of life. Okay, and a lot of the question that I'm going to ask now is that that what the Quran is accused of. So, Brother Naseem, just before I go back to the sheikhs, because you talk a lot about the Quran, so how would you explain the Quran to those people who have misconceptions about it?
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. I'm definitely not a scholar, definitely not. I'm a student of the Deen, and I think that's the way that I like to think all the time. I'm trying to be an abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's ultimately what I'm trying to achieve, inshallah ta'ala, but that's with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as I'm sure everybody else is. But yes, I believe the Quran al-Kareem is the final revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the manual of life. Yep. It's a manual of life for the whole of creation. So, for those who ponder, the ones who wonder, the ones who contemplate, to do that tadabbur, are looking for a purpose in life, are looking for what is their purpose in life, what is the reason we were created, is there something out there, don't know what it is, etc. I don't believe that the Quran is just another religion, if you like, that was finalizing another religion. I believe that Allah Rabbul Alameen only ever sent Islam. So all the prophets previously were Muslim. They were in submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This was the finalization of the deen. And as people deviated, they called themselves Christians, they called themselves other things. That's also mentioned there. But in terms of the revelation, in terms of the system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the creator of the heavens and the earth sent down for humans to follow, was Islam. And it was finalized with the revelation of the Holy Quran.
Okay, mashallah. Now, the text message we usually have is Brother Zahid's, but I think it's delayed. So, Brother Naseem, if you can put it on the screen, if you put a different number on there, if you could put my number on there, it's 07590
07590
277
277
077. And we can change it if Brother Zahid comes. I think Brother Zahid is a bit delayed. Okay, now, Jazakallah for that, Brother Naseem. Now, let me go to Shaykh Bilal. Now, one of the questions, that we, like to, because even people who go to school, who go to college, who go to university, who are at the workplaces, the reason why we do these shows, these are the questions that we get asked on a daily basis. These are the questions that people talk about in the media. These are things that people write about. These are people the likes of Piers Morgan might ask these questions, the likes of Tommy Robinson, the likes of those people. So it's important as young Muslims to understand, because a lot of the times these questions that I'm going to ask you, unfortunately, a lot of the times in mosques, in Jummah khutbahs, they might not be mentioned. I've been going Jummah khutbahs for many years. It's quite rare that I've heard a detailed rebuttal of a lot of these allegations, and hence why we use this kind of platform to ask these kind of questions. Because if these questions aren't answered, then the faith, the iman of Muslims might be, questionable, and they might get a bit worried and anxious. And some people, and we did a show the other day, but Naseem mentioned about 10,000 people leave Islam every year. Okay, that's why I think it's quite crucial to make sure that these questions, inshallah, are answered. So, Shaykh Bilal, if I can come to you first of all, and one of the first allegations that we'll go into in detail is that Islam promotes hatred and violence. Okay, that the Quran and the Prophet ﷺ, that is what they were all about. Okay, and they'll mention certain verses of the Quran, kill them wherever you are, or they will say things like, that the Muslims, that the Quran talks a lot about the kuffar, that you can't be friends with them, that you have to have a hatred towards them, you have to be strict towards them. So, first of all, Shaykh Bilal, what would you say to that in terms of, how would you address that issue where people say that Islam promotes hatred and violence towards non-Muslims?
I think the first thing is that Islam is not a pacifistic religion. So when there is a time to fight, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us permission to defend ourselves and go and fight. We're not pacifists, so there is that element in our religion. We can't deny that. But what we find is people who bring up these issues, what they do is they cherry pick verses out of the Quran and take them out of the context that they were revealed in, that Shaykh Waseem mentioned before, and then they say, "Oh, look at this verse," but they're not taking the full Quran into account. So that is a problem. The way that those people approach the Quran and the methodology. And
I'm sure you must have
rulings around warfare. They're very complex, and they've been discussed by our scholars in the books of jurisprudence. So that it's not something that is straightforward and clear cut, where you can just take a verse out of the Quran and take it out of context.
Yeah. And as you will know, Shaykh Bilal, I'm sure that, I've seen some of your work that you're doing in terms of some of the talks you've been to in terms of Facebook, where you have a lot of dialogue with non-Muslims as well. And so, and a lot of these people now always quote this verse, kill them wherever they are. And they seem to use that willy-nilly. So when you are asked this question, what kind of a book do you follow where it kind of says kill them wherever they are? How do you go about answering an allegation like that?
Well, the first thing is, what does the verse before it say? What does the verse after it say? What is the context of that verse? There are different interpretations about why that verse was revealed. One of them is that it was prohibited to fight in the sanctuary of Mecca. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed those verses in order to give permission, saying kill them wherever you find them, meaning even in the sanctuary of Mecca. at that time. So there are different interpretations to that verse. It shouldn't be taken out of context, and it needs to be looked at with all the other verses in the Quran.
Okay. So are
Yeah,
there
so can I
any
just say, Sajid, Brother Saj, that I'll be very honest as well here. I've been a Muslim all my life. I'm not a convert, or and I come across this a while ago, and I didn't even look into it. I knew my religion just from my religion, what I've been taught, what I practice, and all Muslims practice peace, harmony, happiness. We want to be productive in society. So when the allegation came, the first time I heard this kind of stuff, I just actually didn't bother researching or looking it up, or even trying to figure out why are people saying this against our book, the Quran, or our religion. Obviously, as time goes on, these things become hot topics, and it does linger in your head. And I think that's the reason why we're discussing it, because there are Muslims out there that these are things that their thoughts are going through their head. And then I did my research, and I did look into these verses, and I think what Shaykh Bilal said there is pretty straightforward. It was revealing a context. The Muslims were at war with, by the way, they were at war with their own families. And when you say Muslims, people think that it's just two random group of people. It was the Muslims of Mecca that we're talking about. And who were they fighting at the time? The non-Muslims of Mecca, the disbelievers, the polytheists. Guess what? They were one tribe, one family. They were the same people, same blood, skin, everything. Just one had a different religion. And they were brothers and on either side. They were fathers and son on either side. This was the context. There were other groups involved, but this was the initial kind of clash between these two groups. And in that time, and it's a law of Islam, like Shaykh Bilal said, that there's a sanctuary. It's Mecca. It's not to be violated. You can't even pluck up weeds and plants. You got to leave. It's not something. If it's a very, very sacred area. It's called the sacred mosque and the sacred land of Mecca. So it would always been a tradition amongst the Arabs of that region and beyond, that there's no fighting in special times and special places. There's special times as well, the holy months, as they're known, the sacred months. So when it came to this situation, this ayah was revealed around a time and a place where the Muslims were in a situation of, well, we can't fight here, so we've got to wait and or not. And on this occasion, God Almighty revealed to them that if you do have to fight and you have to fight here, then don't consider it a problem that there's this law or violation. No, the removal of the harm that's being caused and the oppression that's there for this one occasion is allowed. And many of the scholars that Shaykh Bilal said have said that this doesn't apply anymore. Like even if you go to Mecca and there's a battle or you can't fight there. It was only made the case for that one occasion, and that was for the Prophet and the people who were trying to deal with the situation. That's a very specific situation, an ayah. But if you look at all the ayahs of the Quran that may be talking about warfare, military kind of relations, international relations, like Shaykh Bilal said, you need to study the whole context and how it was applied and how the scholars have understood that. And
so all the verses, so all the verses in the Quran, all the verses in the Quran that talk about fighting, that talk about jihad, that talk about fighting the non-believers, the infidels, etc., they are in context. And would you say that they are in self-defense? And would you all say that they can't be applied willy-nilly to our society, to our time today?
Just to add to that, the bigger problem is that we have a minority of Muslims, as you know, that don't respect valid scholarship and feel they can make their own rulings and take their own rulings from the Quran. And unfortunately, some of them, they have this harsh attitude and harsh mentality, and they will take these verses to support their own political cause or whatever, and they'll take them out of context. So some Muslims are doing that, never mind, the non-Muslims. And then obviously that has this after effect where non-Muslims will now start looking at these verses again. But we ask them, why are you taking those verses and leaving out all the other verses? Well, Allah says, "Lakum dinukum waliyadin, fabima rahmatin min Allahi linta lahum," and all the verses about mercy and about forgiving, and all the times that the Prophet ﷺ was harmed by disbelievers sometimes, and he overlooked and forgave them. So they ignore a lot of those verses in Hadith, and they're very selective in the verses that they choose in order to suit their political games. It's the same in every religion. The Ku Klux Klan have done it to justify their racism. The Lord's Army in Central Africa, it's a Christian fundamentalist group. They use verses out of the Bible The Christians, they use verses out of the Bible to justify slavery. So it happens in all religions. But we have sound scholarship in Islam. We have orthodoxy in Islam. And when people deviate from that and start making their own rules up, that's when the problem occurs.
MashaAllah, Jazakallah. We've got Brother Zahid who has finally joined us, MashaAllah. Brother Zahid, how are you? Are you well?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sorry, I'm a little bit late. I was a little bit incapacitated.
He was growing his beard.
Yes,
That what took him so long.
MashaAllah. Looking good, Zaid. Looking good.
MashaAllah.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh Waseem. How are you doing?
I was missing you so much. I'm so happy you're here. I'm doing a lot better now. Alhamdulillah. Good to see you, Zaid.
Was it that naughty boy Saji again trying to be a bully?
No, he's fine. He's all right, mashallah.
Right. How come we've got the side aspects of Brother Naseem today?
Too busy, man.
All right. Okay, fair enough. Either we see him. All right. Showing us the Talwar of Sultan. All right, cake.
No. It's my turn to do the ginger. So I'm actually peeling the ginger to make ginger juice out of it. So alhamdulillah, I'm doing that at the same time and I'm watching you guys and listening, mashallah.
Very good.
So I've got to do my household duties as well, isn't it?
Yeah. But Shaykh Bilal there. Have you broken into Manchester Central Library there, Sheikh? All the books behind you, or is it a string? Is it a cover or something? Is it one of these wallpapers that you have, or is it genuinely all them books behind you? I don't think it's funny, that is it? Well, Sheikh Bilal, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Well, but you know what it is, Brother Zaid? You don't mess with Shaykh Bilal, yeah? You know your jokes, yeah? They're not going to work on him. They're not going to work with Shaykh Bilal, okay? This is a serious dude, all right? Them are real books, okay?
One thing on that point that Shaykh Bilal made, that people taking the books out of context, subhanallah, we see it all the time. People utilize these verses and the Quran. I mean, which Shaykh was it the other night who said that this is the book that Allah will give you hidayah through it, and some will be misled through it. So this is the element. And the other thing is that there are many reverts that we speak to. One in particular who was heading a right-wing party in I think it was Norway and or Holland or somewhere like that, and basically he took shahada after writing a book and doing a documentary on those very verses, and I had the pleasure of picking him up from the airport, and I said to him, I looked at I watched your documentary, read some of the articles that you've done, yet here you are defending the very verses that you published. And he said, that Islam was the religion of terror, all these things, horrible things, horrific things. The Prophet ﷺ married a 6-year-old child, and etc. He said all these things. And I said, but here we are, 2-3 years later, you're defending the very verses that you wrote about. And he basically said that it was a non-Muslim journalist, one of his colleagues, that gave him dawah.
Wow.
So how did he give him dawah when Allah Rabbul Alameen, he doesn't need no scholars, he doesn't need no Muslims to give dawah, although it's our duty. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent this journalist to him and asked him the question. And basically the question was that you wrote all these horrible things about Islam. Do you know about these verses where Allah Rabbul Alameen says, God Almighty says in the Quran, in the same book that you wrote about, to look after the poor, to look after the destitute, to do charity work, to be righteous to your parents, and etc. He said, no, it can't be. There's no such verse like that in the Quran. He went away and he picked up a copy of the Quran and he started reading it. 18 months later, he went into the local masjid where, by this time he was very, very famous. And really, he thought that he wasn't thinking straight, obviously. But he walked into the masjid and he didn't know what to do. He walked into the masjid, he didn't know the etiquettes of the masjid or anything like that. He fell into sujood. And the brothers, 5 brothers came round and they didn't hurdle him out of the mosque. They recognized him. That was his local masjid. They hugged him. They used the etiquette of Nabi sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, and they got him to embrace Islam. Subhanallah.
MashaAllah.
These are the stories we hear all this, and then ultimately people say that Islam oppresses women. Yet it's more women that actually accept Islam in Britain.
Is that the case?
That's the case, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's just
Jazakallah.
2-1.
Yeah, mashallah. And
Yeah,
I
I just
think
want to say there, Saj, that I think Brother Naseem and Shaykh Bilal mentioned a very important point there, that the people are selective and they cherry pick, and it's two sides of the same coin. You've got your people who attack Islam, your Islamophobes, these people who are aggressive towards Islam, right winged as we might say, and then you got these extremist, kind of radical, as we sometimes say, Muslims, fundamentalists, whatever words we use, but they're the same. They just want to pick one or two things, and that's their deen, that's their way of life, almost. That just that's all it is. I think Brother Naseem's really opened our eyes up there. It's the name of. I've read the book. He's got a book called Apostate. His name is Joram van Klaveren. I actually read the book about 2-3 months ago. I know his story quite well, and it's amazing how he says in his book, I was against this, where he mentions women, he mentions a lot of things accused against the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Quran, and he said he wanted to ban the Quran and ban Muslims in Holland. He was in the parliament. He was a famous politician, right-winged, part of a party that was obviously extremist, nationalist type party, and he changed all of that by himself. He did take advice from people. He wrote letters to certain individuals, but it was a self discovery journey. Is quite amazing. I'd recommend the book, actually, Apostate by Joram van Klaveren. Yeah, sorry, back to you, Saj.
no, fantastic.
No,
I just wanted to. Yeah,
I've got a couple of text messages, Brother Sajid. I'll clear them first, and then we can carry on with the rest of the show. So tonight, Let's Talk is about misconceptions about Islam, and we have with us Shaykh Waseem Ahmed with us, and also Shaykh Bilal Brown. So Bilal Brown, straight away, brother. We've got a lot of people saying big salam to Shaykh Bilal Brown. Another one, Bilal Brown, excellent speaker. Another one here, how come you didn't have Shaykh Bilal Brown on before? Very, very busy Shaykh. That's why, getting him on today. We've got him on at the right show. So looks like you've got a fan club out there, Shaykh Bilal. A lot of people looking forward to you on the show tonight.
Alhamdulillah.
I've got some text messages, and these are questions about misconceptions about Islam. I think the first one, and we've had this in the radio show, is that and remember, guys, these are not our opinions, right? The first one is that the Quran may well be the book of God. However, hadiths are not the book of God, and they are man-made, and they lead to corruption because there is too many misconceptions within the hadith. For example, do I read Eid Namaz at home or not? So that's one question. Another one here is about.
We don't need non-Muslims to go against us, eh?
Well, who needs enemies when you've got a few Muslims here? Yeah. Another misconception that's coming up here is Islam is fundamentally chauvinistic, and this is from a sister who obviously wishes to remain nameless, and she says most laws are favored for men. For example, rape, woman's word is not good enough, and inheritance, a woman doesn't get the same thing. So how can Islam consider itself to be in the 21st century? Those are the text messages that we've got so far. You're listening to Let's Talk, and we've got a show tonight about misconceptions. I want to send a big salam out to Brother Aziz from Executive Barbers. And can we do dua that he actually get some sleep? And because he's actually cutting thin hair, there's nothing in between his scissors. Just also a big salam to Brother Pips and his nephew and the guys who are out there at the moment. Brother Sajid.
Yes, Jazakallah. I think all these questions that you're getting, inshallah, we are going to get through them gradually. So, inshallah, we will go into a bit of detail in terms of rights of women. We will go into detail in terms of some of the questions as well. Just want to try to get into some kind of routine. So, what we, Brother Zaid, what we've kind of talked about so far is, does Islam promote hatred? Does Islam promote violence? I just want to try to finish this issue if I can. So let me go to Sheikh Bilal. Now, I can remember a few years ago, people from Britain First, they went into a bookshop and they kind of said into Islamic bookshop, and they was, and this relates to this question that someone said about hadith, and they mentioned this hadith that the hour will not come until the Muslims fight the Jews and they kill them, and then the trees and the rocks will say there is a Jew under this rock, then why don't you kill him? And they're saying that you are saying that Islam is a religion of peace, and this is in Sahih Bukhari and this is Sahih Muslim, and this is what your prophet is saying. So when these hadiths are there, people are saying that it's because of these hadiths that we can't really believe in them, but secondly, that these hadiths are also promoting hatred and also violence. Again, Sheikh Bilal, your understanding of hadiths like that and allegations like that.
I think they need to be looked at individually, these hadith, and we don't just take hadith face value and run with it. Even one of the Salaf, one of the early Muslims, I think it was Sufyan ibn Uyayna, he said al-hadith madillatun li ghayri al-fuqaha. He said that hadith is misleading for the people who aren't scholars, for people who aren't jurists. So it's okay to memorize a hadith and read a hadith, but what does it mean? And what is the context of that hadith? Some hadith we have, they're not applied anymore. We know that they're abrogated. There's many, many hadith that the ruling of them, it doesn't even apply anymore.
What about if there are, sorry, Sheikh Bilal, to interrupt you, but what about if those hadiths, are Sahih Muslim or the high levels? Are there any of those that are there any of those that are not applicable anymore?
Yeah, there's many hadith in Sahih Muslim and Bukhari that are abrogated. For example, there's hadith about writing the will, where it says whoever doesn't have a will, then he dies the death of a person of Jahiliyyah, of pre-Islam. But that's abrogated. All the inheritance laws are set out in the Quran now. There are many hadith that are abrogated in this Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim.
Okay.
What we need to remember is a hadith is just a vehicle. These books were tools for recording and preserving those narrations. It doesn't mean that we necessarily take rulings from them. Yeah. In fact, we don't. That's one of the things we don't do. We don't just take a hadith and take a ruling from it. Some of the hadith are speaking about the end of times, about future events.
Thank you.
That may not be relevant to us in our day and age.
Again,
it goes down to this issue of cherry picking.
Yeah. Shaykh Waseem, just so that you're up to speed with what's going on. During Ramadan, we've had Shaykh Harun Hanif on our shows a number of times. And mashallah, is excellent answers to questions, and obviously a very learned scholar. But, and I'm sorry to say this, in the last 10 days of Ramadan, he has been bullying me quite a lot. And in particular, I've noticed tonight he started to bully Shaykh Bilal as well.
Right.
So I'm just saying, before, I'm going to be in the cooker.
Are you giving me a heads up?
Yeah, so you could be next. So look at this. Look, Shaykh Bilal has done nothing wrong, yeah? Okay, I might have asked him about all these books, and maybe he has read a few. But look at this.
I've done a couple of things wrong, but anyway.
Yeah. But shit, look, this is what I'm saying about these scousers. It doesn't stop Shaykh Bilal. Look, I can send this as proof. I can send it. Will Shaykh Bilal wear a Liverpool shirt for charity? Ask Shaykh Harun is wearing an MUFC shirt for charity. Shaykh Harun, you're a United fan. All this charity business is nonsense. Deep down, it's what you wanted. You saw this and you thought, yes, Brother Zaid, you ran that quick. Your heels were hitting you at the back of the head because you couldn't get a Man United shirt fast enough. Another one here, Brother Sajid, sorry. Second question is, how come Naveed marks Shaykh Bilal out of a five-a-side all the time and he doesn't get a sniff of goal? Well, what I'm saying to you, brother, is Shaykh Harun needs some help. Sajid, can we arrange, please, to go in a car to Liverpool. We'll have to get one. But can we hire a car, because we're not going to get it back once we park it there? But Shaykh Waseem, this is what we're up against. We've been talking about aggressive behaviour and bullying, yeah. And Sheikh Haroon has been bullying me so many times. I just thought I'd share it with you. And now, by the way, he's picked on Shaykh Bilal as well. So,
Okay, much.
are you going to be wearing a Liverpool Liverpool top anytime soon?
I don't know. It's a tough one, that one.
I think the answer should be no.
Depends how much money I get. I don't know.
Okay, let me go to Shaykh Waseem, because some of the misconceptions is that the Quran promotes this hatred towards non-Muslims where you can't be friends with them. So first of all, Shaykh, if I can go with that, and how did the Prophet ﷺ treat non-Muslims, and was he friends with them, etc.?
No, I think before we mention the answer to that, when it comes to medicine, right? Doctors have to study several years, and they have to be trained in hospitals and surgeries, and then they have a mentor. If you want to become a solicitor, you got to go through law school, then you got to practice, then you got to be qualified, accountant. So there's a long process before you're qualified to speak regarding the field. We don't, when we want something with law or immigration or business or something, we speak to solicitors, we phone a specialist, and we've got to pay them as well, right? When we ill or we got a problem, we go to the doctor because we know they're qualified. I think the problem that's prevalent in evident here in our discussion is every Tom, Dick and Harry can say what they want about Islam. Hadith are this, Hadith are that, like Shaykh Bilal is saying that, and he made a very good point that this Hadith there are a certain amount of Hadith that anybody could read and understand. They're very basic, right? They just tell you to do something like say Allahu Akbar or La ilaha illallah, and be kind. Fantastic. But the Hadith regarding rulings, the Quran, which is a lot of it's regarding rulings and etiquettes and social kind of interactions, they can't just be read by anyone and then interpreted and then applied as well. The rules of application are so vast and so detailed. It's a specialist field, and non-specialists are speaking regarding this, and it doesn't sound nice. Just like if I was to speak about medicine, a doctor would be looking at me thinking, "You idiot, shut up!
Exactly.
Who are you to speak about it?" And I shouldn't feel offended by him telling me to shut up, because I have no right to speak about medicine.
You're not in that field. You wouldn't talk about it. Very similar to when we listen to Sheikh Haroon Hanif from Liverpool, when he gives his fatwas and talks about Islam, we listen with our ears. But the minute he starts talking about football, you switch off, because you know straight away.
Brilliant analogy, right? Exactly. Doesn't care who cares what he says about football. It's not worth anything. But when he talks about religion, he's qualified. You got to listen to him.
Don't you agree, Shaykh Bilal?
Absolutely.
Thanks. You don't ever go to Liverpool anymore.
So to come to the point that the question was, just to go back to the point on the tree and the killing and so forth, people miss a crucial part of that hadith in itself. That hadith is in the context of the end of times that Shaykh Bilal mentioned, where there'll be one group that are fighting with the Dajjal, the Antichrist. So it's not about Jews or Muslims, it's about the group that's with the Antichrist, and there'll be a group of Jews with them, and there might be Muslims that go on that side as well, we don't know, and Christians and other people, right? And the Prophet was telling us that you will fight them, not us, literally us, but some Muslims in the future, and this is what will happen. Those fighting with the Dajjal, they'll hide, and you'll be victorious, and then you'll be told that some of the followers, them being Jews in this case, are hiding. So it doesn't mean all of a sudden now, today, we've got to become aggressive towards these people. That's not at all what this hadith means. And I'll actually refer you back to the book by Jordan Balclaver, and he went into this anti-Semitism. He writes in his book that I thought Islam was anti-Semitic and so forth. So I researched this, and I'm amazed how he, as a convert to Islam, is presenting proofs and arguments, telling you, look, I found Islam to be so more accommodating for the Jewish community and Jewish people than any other tradition on the face of the earth. The Jews were flourished and successful amongst Islamic Spain, in the Ottoman Empire, and around the Muslim world, in Baghdad, for instance, and so forth, more than anywhere. They were persecuted everywhere else, and they were welcomed by the Muslims. The Ottoman leader, he sent, when the Spanish Inquisition and all that occurred, he sent navies and fleets to save the Muslims and Jews and bring them to the Ottoman Empire. That's the history we have. It's not a hatred of hatred. It's a history of communal cohesion and communal support. And there's a concept of. Sorry, Sheikh Bilal, if you wanna.
In the 16th century, the percentage of Jews in Istanbul was 10% of the population. Can you believe it? It's more than London. 10% of Istanbul was Jewish in the 16th century in the Ottoman Empire.
So history clearly shows us there was a communal cohesion. There was a lot of support for each other. And just to mention that point, yes, it does. You obviously you could refer to me in ayat of the Quran where it says, "Do not take the disbelievers as allies." This is the word we got to differ. It doesn't say friends. It says allies, meaning you may have political situations where you need to be in a position. So it's all about these international relations and relations between different ideologies and different forms of governance. So our governance is Islamic, and we have certain rules. We can't compromise them because of others. We have to live in out, and this is a struggle we all have. Certain values we want to uphold, and others may not agree with us, and that's where we got to learn to agree to disagree. And the concept of this is that you don't go on, go to this state of you can be friends with them. There's nothing wrong with that. You can be friendly with them. There's nothing wrong with that. But you cannot take on their way of living. You cannot ally yourselves amongst them. Their system of approach.
It's a mistranslation of the Quran. The Quran says awliya. It doesn't say astiqa, which is the word for friends in Arabic. But the good thing is we still have the Quran in Arabic. So we can go back to the Arabic and clear up any of those misconceptions. But there are much worse verses in the Bible, I'll tell you now, in the Revelation, in the Old Testament. There's a lot more violence, and there's a lot of more verses that are worse in the Bible.
Yeah, and you know what, Shaykh Bilal?
So what you're saying, Shaykh Bilal, is if we compare the Bible
is,
to the Quran,
that's what cherry picking things.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. If you somebody maybe have researched both in a bit more depth, if you were to take the Bible and the Quran, just look at them, fairly, balanced way, which one would you deem more aggressive or more violent or more,
the Bible definitely is.
We've had a few text messages come through. I think that one of them says here, maybe if the scholars applied rather than tell others not to do things, we'd have leadership. And the Hadith, it says it specifically points to the Jews. So I know we've covered this question, and another one saying, I'll carry on with that. One other text message that's come through. Will you brothers be discussing women's rights and how Islam doesn't give women any rights? Is that true? So, Brother Sajid?
Yes, we are. I've just got one more question in terms of what we're talking about. Then we'll go straight into women's rights. One thing I want to go into, and I'll go to Shaykh Waseem if that's okay. The word that creates a lot of confusion, misconception is the word jihad. Okay, people, when they think about jihad, they think about violence, they think about terrorism, they think about ISIS, etc. So Shaykh, and also Shaykh Bilal as well. So with Shaykh Waseem first, what's your understanding of the word jihad and how would you explain it and what does it mean?
Yeah, firstly, I agree with the point sent in by the brother or sister there about scholars being more applying it themselves and sharing and teaching and learning. Like Brother Sajid said, we've had a vacuum. The Mimbar hasn't been used to educate in modern issues and deal with the current crises that face us as Muslims and situations. So yeah, we are at a loss. We need to work together to kind of now counteract that issue. And in regards to this concept now of jihad and what is that? Jihad is an Arabic word. Again, beautiful point Shaykh Bilal mentioned. We've still got the Arabic language. So if you look at the Arabic language, if you look at jihad and you look, what it means, you'll find that it just means struggle. It means to strive to do something. And that word was used later on for a spiritual struggle against your ego, your whims, a military struggle against oppressive people who are, driving you out of your homes and killing you or trying to kill you and assassinate you because you're believing in God. And the response to them is a form of struggle and jihad. So this was the term, and now obviously people use it to mean holy war or again. And then the funny thing is you won't find any translation or any actual linguistical lexicon of Arabic that will say jihad is holy war. You'll say holy war is harb. And again, the harb is in the Quran. It's the word war is in the Quran, and the word war is well known to the people of the Arabic language, but it's a different word, harb. Right, Shaykh Bilal, what would you say?
I think the Quran does use, the root word jihad for both meanings. So sometimes the Quran, will mention jihad in terms of fighting, and sometimes, it is about your own personal struggle as well. So the word is used for both terms.
And you know, Shaykh
But
Bilal,
like we said, we're
yeah.
not a pacifistic religion.
Yeah.
There are times when we are required to fight.
And when Muslims
obviously
are,
within a context,
you know,
and
when when Muslims are required to fight, are there any particular rules that exist when it comes to jihad? Or can we just blow up a bus and blow up a car, and I can go into a shopping center and I can kill anyone? Are there any rules and regulations?
Yeah.
And when does the jihad apply when it comes to the battlefield and when it comes to, you know, the fighting aspect?
Yeah,
of
that's
jihad?
what I was coming on to. There are conditions, so it's not just for anybody just to.
So which country is
or-
jihad, as in the physical jihad, allowed?
It's
Because
not
if we
about
say,
country or.
yeah, surely there must be some country in the world now, when we look at the way that tyranny is. Are there any legitimate causes anywhere you could say? Palestine, Syria, Egypt, Sudan, Yemen. There must be somewhere along the line where this line is being crossed, where people are being oppressed and people are being tortured and brothers are. So is there any legitimization for the fight version of jihad that you know of?
It's up to, you know, the jurists and the heads of state, and, you know, to make that decision when the time is appropriate and when the conditions are fully met as well. You know, Europe went to war, didn't it, against the Nazis? Would you have said that was a wrong decision for them to do, to go to war against Hitler and they stay at home and not fight? Okay, so sometimes, you know, you have to fight for the greater good, and Islam has that concept as well, that there are times
Yeah, you know,
Well, it has to have the-
when the
Yeah.
conditions
Yeah,
the conditions are met. We don't have, you know, groups or vigilantism in Islam and people going against the decisions of a legitimate ruler. That's against Islam. So when
I just sort of says when I'm from Sheffield, and I met a brother who was a convert to Islam actually, and he said that, you know, when he embraced Islam, one of the things that helped him change and understand Islam properly was the life of the Prophet ﷺ. And he said first when he read these things, you know, about the fights and the battles and the jihad, which is, you know, a spiritual struggle of war and on the battlefield as well. And he said that he eventually, once he read about the life of the Prophet ﷺ and the whole situation, the whole context of things, he said, I believe that the Prophet went to war to achieve peace. He didn't go to war for the sake of war, this aggressive war, this, you know, attacking kind of attitude. He went to war to remove oppression. He went to war to remove tyranny. He went to war to achieve a greater goal and greater good, which is, I think, a brilliant example, like with my Shaykh Bilal, of, you know, world wars that have occurred, or wars that occur between anybody. It's a case of trying to remove something, or sometimes it is just all out attack or all out, you know, tyranny. But there's a side that usually has a greater motive, a higher morale, a moral ground to what they want to achieve, you know.
Yeah.
We see in the Bible as well, many of the prophets, David and Moses, they all engaged in battles.
Yeah. What would you say to the Muslims today who take part in acts of violence and terrorism and extremism in the name of Islam, using the same verses and hadiths that we've mentioned? That's where the confusion and the misconception, the likes of ISIS, the likes of Al-Qaeda and whoever they are, they use the Quran, they use certain hadiths to do acts of violence. So what would you say to these kind of organizations who use Islam? And then can you blame people if they have any misconceptions?
I would say that it's a very deep, deep problem. You know, like you said, it's not they've just read an ayah of the Quran and they've just gone and done something. It doesn't work like that. You know, it takes a lot of time, brainwashing, manipulation. So there are people actively working to do this. Where does that come from? Why are there people actively working to do this? That has a foundation as well. And it comes in this foundation of rejecting scholarship, rejecting orthodoxy, becoming extreme, not being happy with the society, and then wanting to forcefully change it, realizing it doesn't work. You go underground movements form. So it's a long history behind extremism and extremist movements. But and then obviously, as they say, de-radicalizing and, you know, getting people back is a hard work, and it requires a lot of engagement, and there's specialist services set up for this, as you know, and stuff like that. But it's a deep problem, and it's a long-winded kind of whole process. But
would you say?
So the roots are hundreds of years ago that have led up to today. It's not an overnight thing or a decade or two. It's a long-lasting or long, story behind all of this. That unfortunately we see the outcome and the results of more and more today. So what would we say to these people? I don't think we can say much to them. They're not going to listen to me. Not going to listen to Shaykh Bilal. If they were, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing, right? They need to be engaged. It's a long conversation with them. They need to be helped. People of this nature actually got problems that they need help with. If you actually look at statistics, most people engage in extremism are not religiously practicing. They don't follow the laws of Islam themselves. They actually may be committing fornication or doing drugs or involved in crime and stuff like this. And then they misled, like we said, they're manipulated and they are taken towards these kind of extremist activities. So it's a very dangerous area.
There's two levels to it. There's one, you've got those that have political motives. Okay, something may have happened in their countries and they have now political motives. And then you've got those that are maybe innocent and they've been groomed online or they've been indoctrinated and enticed into joining that way. So there are two aspects to it.
So one would actually believe they're doing the right thing because that's what they've been brainwashed to. The other ones, they just want social change. They want kind of whatever is wrong around them. It doesn't justify it, by the way. We're not saying this justifies the action, but this is the problem, you see. Go on, Zaid.
So what about this then? If you look at the news, you look at current affairs, and you look at terrorism, and Islam before 9/11 was a major world religion, and we had funny customs, funny ways. We weren't considered a threat to anybody. In fact, far from it. After 9/11, the climate changes, and we are now considered to be. The word terrorism and Islam goes hand in hand. You can't be a terrorism unless you're a Muslim because the media says so. But here's the question. These people who we say are fanatics, who allegedly suicide bombers or whatever that they are. Why is it that the government in this country and the major G7 countries have a policy of shoot to kill? So, for example, the butcher who shot dead the MP who had she had a political opinion. She wasn't religious, pro-Muslim or anything. Something Cox who got killed.
Cox.
Yeah, Joe Cox. The murderer of that was arrested, taken in, now sitting in jail. Whereas anybody, if he would have said he's Muslim, he would have been shot dead. So I think the point I'm trying to say is, before we lambast everybody and say every single person who committed an act of jihad, is completely wrong, I'd say we don't know because they've never had a trial. We never find out who is doing the online grooming. Is it the country themselves? Are they being forced? What is going on? It's a big picture. With regards to the misconception, I believe completely it's a misconception that every terrorist, at the moment, according to the UK government, the highest number of terrorists or areas that they're interested in of concern, surprisingly, is the right wing.
Far right.
It's the far right. It's the far right. So I think that sometimes when ultimately, I do not condone and say that Muslims should be blowing anybody up. But, like Shaykh Bilal said, within Islam, the call to arms does exist. If we say that the Quran is the complete guidance for all mankind, surely there's guidance in there for war, isn't there, Brother Saeed?
Yes, there is. I've just got a text message and it's got the questions for the sheikhs. It says, Salam brothers, doing a great job. Questions for the sheikhs. How are the suicide bombings done by Palestinians in Israel different to those done by ISIS, which we obviously believe are wrong? Due to struggles the Palestinians are going through, does it make it permissible, for example, a family member to blow themselves up in retaliation for losing a family member by Jewish Israeli army?
Brother Sajid, before anyone answers this question, I have to say something from a legal point of view. The honest answer to this question cannot be fully said on air because it would be against UK policy. Because if we were to say, according to the Quran and Sunnah, if this condition is met, this condition is met, this condition is met, it is permissible. That person then could be in violation of the current UK terror laws. So the sheikhs need to be aware of that before they answer any question. Sadly, we can't tell the truth because there is some justification inside there if it was legally permitted for us to say it. So you have to be careful when we're answering this question.
Shaykh Waseem?
You mic's unmute your mic.
I think you might.
Sorry. Yeah. So first of all, it's a controversial, discussion. It's not a unanimous opinion on this that everyone agrees. Consensus. There's various opinions from various scholars. Like you said, Brother Zaid, there's a very complicated situation in Palestine, very unique situation, and for that reason, you will find scholars. I'm not saying I say that, or you will find this out there, right? We're talking about what's out there, not what we're saying. You will find scholars saying it's okay, it's this, it's that, which is problematic because it then results in suicide bombings. Okay, then Islam condones suicide bombing. Then they say no, it's specific to this people, etc. Why exactly? I've not come across the reasons, but I do know that exists out there. Maybe Shaykh Bilal can elaborate a bit further if he knows anything on the specifics.
Yeah, so some scholars, from the Middle East, they actually gave this fatwa on the basis of, one of the companions, he rushed into a crowd of, the enemy disbelievers, and he knew that he was going to die, but he still did it anyway. So this fatwa was issued despite opposition by some other ulama. So like Shaykh Waseem said, there is that opinion out there just for that specific circumstance in Palestine. My own view is that it's not permitted due to the general verse in the Quran, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Allah says, don't kill yourselves. Okay, so the generality of that verse, indicates that it's not permitted to do that act whatsoever, and that's not.
Yeah, it's never sat right with me. And if you look at the history of suicide bombings and so forth, you will not find it as at all as a mainstream activity of any Muslims. And I think it came about in the 1970s or 80s amongst the Muslims themselves. Yeah. Before that, it never existed.
Hang on.
It never existed.
It did exist. It did exist.
No, amongst the Muslims. Not amongst the Muslims.
Forget about the Muslims, yeah?
Sorry, go ahead. I know what you mean, yeah.
Shaykh Waseem, yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you with that, because this is one of the misconceptions in itself, that somehow the Muslims were the creators of suicide bombings. If we go back, and we only need to look at, I'll give you a good example, probably the cheesiest example, the film Pearl Harbor. In the film Pearl Harbor, Alec Baldwin is the chief who's organizing the bomb to be dropped in Japan. He's asked the question, look, if we run out of fuel, what are we going to do? Now, instead of saying, well, work out your fuel level, and then if you realize you're not, you'll have to come back. He says, what I would do, I would bury my plane right in the heart of those Jap so-and-sos. So in that film, it's considered to be quite a noble thing to do, right? Heroic, a noble thing to do. In the First World War, there's famous stories of people with the last hand grenade falling underneath the tank because they knew they had nothing else. So it's nothing to do with Islam as the creators of, and even before that, Japanese samurais would consider harikari, killing themselves first, rather than give themselves up to and then be tortured and revealed, where's your base camp? So when we think about suicide bombing, you've got to remember, because of the way that it's being done now, where some, lunatic who may well not have been versed by the Quran jumps into and kills an innocent person. That's not what we're talking about here. But what you've got to think is, with this question, Brother Sajid, yeah?
Do you know the problem with a bomb is a bomb doesn't discriminate. So that's a massive problem. Anybody who's in the vicinity of that bomb, whether they're a woman or a child or an old person, they're going to get hurt or killed, which is not permitted in our religion.
Yeah.
So bombs, they don't discriminate. It doesn't sit well with our tradition whatsoever.
I think we could get derailed by this whole subject on this one point. But I have got another. Are you going to be dealing with the women's rights one?
Yeah, right now, yeah.
Right. Okay. So on the women's rights one, the 3 questions that have come forward are: number 1, women's right in terms of inheritance.
Yeah, got that,
yeah. And the other one is with regards to women can't divorce.
Yeah, got that, yeah.
Yeah. And the other one is with regards to being victims of rape.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Jazakallah. So let me go to Shaykh Waseem then, because this is an issue I think, you know, when we talked about before that people leave Islam, or when people, we have ex-Muslims, and then there's a lot of, you know, Islamophobes. After, when it comes to jihad and terrorism, this is the issue that comes up quite a lot, and a lot of young Muslims are really confused about these issues. Well, like someone that sent a text message that, you know, Islam is a chauvinistic religion because all the rules favor the men. So let's try to break this down if we can. Then, so first of all, Sheikh Waseem, if we can talk about the issue when it comes to women, because people want to know what the rights are, and I think the first thing that the question was referring to, when it comes to the issues of inheritance, and also when it comes to the issues of witnesses, you know, for female, there has to be 2 female witnesses against 1 male. So we can start with these 2 subjects. So first of all, Sheikh Waseem, in terms of inheritance, that there seems to be, it does not favor the ladies. If you want to start with that first of all.
Yeah, no, thank you. So when it comes to answering some of these questions, they're a bit more nuanced and, you know, detailed, and you can't just give a one sentence to an answer that will satisfy someone. There'll always be a very general kind of answers. Won't be an answer really. So what we've got to understand, and Shaykh Bilal mentioned this earlier, is what's before that verse, what's after that verse. What was before Islam and women and the whole role of Islam and women, and what was after, and what was alongside, you know, what's the whole context. And you'll find that women were the most oppressed of people, and its history has kind of shown us that. And Islam actually, when it came, gave them so many rights that had been unheard of, and were unheard of until you know, the Enlightenment age in Europe, and, you know, the modern age. So, you know, Islam was several hundred years ahead of giving women rights and inheritance and respect in the community and so forth. And when it comes to these specifics, these were these were massive honors. You know, there've never been such thing as inheritance for a lady, right? So when Islam said ladies get this much inheritance, the mother gets this much, and in some circumstances it's the same. In some very rare circumstances, women actually get more, but majority of the circumstances, the men will, equivalent men to women, will get more because of the social state, you know, system there, that the men were responsible for the women. They had the majority of the wealth. And, you know, they had to use their wealth to support their family, whereas the wife, the lady folk didn't have to use their wealth. So that was the system, how it was applied. So it only made sense that the male folk had more money, because they were going to use it on the ladies anyway. They were going to have to spend it anyway. It wasn't their personal wealth, by the way. There was a right in their wealth, and is still, and the laws still apply with children, with the spouses, and so forth. Whereas with the women, their money is their money. I mean, when it comes to single mothers, for instance, it's a different situation. They've got the responsibility to pay for or look after their children and so forth, which is, again, another area of discussion. But because I've got to go, Saj, I just want to touch on the other topics as well. When it comes to divorce, again, same thing, that there's got to be a social system of, you know, how divorce works. And if we say anybody can divorce anyone anytime, the divorce statistic will be very high up. It doesn't mean just because a wife can't divorce her husband, she can't get legal separation, by the way. And Shaykh Bilal probably has dealt with situations and maybe elaborate on this in his section, inshallah. And finally, I just want to touch, because I've got to go, Saj, I'm sorry guys, I've got to leave you a bit earlier than expected. When it comes to the witnesses, again, witnesses, by the way, in this regard is referring to financial transactions. It's not referring to every single affair. In fact, if you look at every different areas, when it comes to, let's say, birth and childbirth, the witness of the lady is given precedence over the witnessing of a male. Why? Because in that day and age, the vast majority, if not all, of the merchants and all of the business people and all of the transactions were led by men, were done by men, and very rarely did a lady get involved. So it doesn't say, and by the way, this is a misconception, it's not that the testimony of 2 women is equal to 1 man. No, that's not what the Quran says. It says that if you can't find 2 men, then find 1 man and 2 women. If the lady, when she's giving testimony, needs help, then the other lady can help her. It says that in the Quran. It says that other can help her. So it's basically making sure that if ladies get involved, then they have support. And that's all it's saying. It's not saying that the testimony is less or half.
She's not half a man.
No, of course not. Exactly. It's nothing to do with being men or women. It was actually, the ayahs revealed in the longest ayah of the Quran, that ruling is revealed to do with writing down debts and financial transactions. And even, as Shaykh Bilal mentioned earlier, you don't have to write things down. It's a recommendation. Of course, some cases you need witnesses. So this is where it comes. And then obviously based on that particular ayah, scholars then differ over whether we can make an analogy and take this to other areas or not, and so forth. And you can't in some areas. For instance, when it comes to certain areas, the testimony of women is not allowed. When it comes to certain other areas, the testimony of men might not be accepted. So it was just a specific area that now is, it's the propaganda. It's people want to make big issues of things and misrepresent and misconvey certain ideas. So I think that always got to go back to the context and the details around things to get a proper understanding. Thank you guys for having me on the show. Sorry, can't stay till the end, but appreciate you giving me the opportunity. And I'll see Shaykh Bilal in a Liverpool shirt next time.
I don't think Shaykh Waseem, I just want to say, I'm sorry I was a little bit late, but you are absolutely awesome. When you come on, the way you answer things, everything, we just wish we could have got you on earlier. But inshallah, we might be doing this show on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis. So I hope that we can come and get you. Just a comment that we've had. It says, if you look at the screen where Brother Naseem is at the top, it looks like a prison cell. If you look at the one where Brother Sajid is, it looks like he's actually also in a prison cell. And if you look at where Shaykh Bilal is, it looks like he's in a library. Looks like you're in the Ottoman Empire and sat next to Ertugrul. And I could be behind Punch and Judy show.
Okay, Zad. Take care, everyone. Salam alaikum.
Yeah,
thank you.
Much appreciated. Yeah. And Eid Mubarak to your family, inshallah. Yeah. So just want to go through a few text messages here, please.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. The first one is from somebody called Rashid saying, brothers, listen to your show. Absolutely unbelievable. Love the fact that you've got two scholars and they're able to expand on the same views. And I notice two scholars in the same room, don't know whether they follow the same madhab, but no argument. Is this the way forward for Muslims?
I think for educated scholars or for educated Muslims, that's always the case. But I think unfortunately, for some of them, they can't tolerate a difference of opinion. So, but that.
It says here, Assalamu alaikum, brethren, Bilal from Manaza. Yeah, I think he's still claiming you keep kicking him at football. Assalamu alaikum here for Brother Azhar. Assalamu alaikum to Brother Hasib and to the guys at Executive Barbers. Can we do dua, please, for Brother Aziz? He doesn't know whether he's coming or going, and he's actually cutting thinner as usual. A few more text messages here. Here's one. With regards to the misconception about family planning, people say Muslims are not allowed to practice family planning. Is this the case? Another one here, I think it says here, brothers, with regards to this year, I've been really, really impressed by the fact that you guys are talking about mental health. Now, is it a misconception that Muslims cannot go and see a mental health professional because all guidance is in the Quran, and by reading Quran and we go to a mental health professional, we are not following God's rules? Okay. So I think what they're saying there is, if you've got any mental problems, Quran Paro, go and read the Quran, go and read the Quran. Obviously, that's not something you would discourage. But, what they're saying is, are you able to take treatment elsewhere? There's two other questions that have come through as well. I'll give those and then we can carry on with the rest of it, yeah? Another misconception is someone said there were actually 31 volumes of the Quran, and one of them has disappeared. Is that true?
Okay.
Yeah, I'll go with those, Brother Sajid, please.
Okay. Shaykh Bilal, because there's quite a lot of questions, how long do you have, first of all?
Maximum 15 minutes, I think.
Okay, that's fine. So let me just go through these questions then, inshallah. So let's just go one step back then. So Shaykh Waseem talked a bit about inheritance, and he's also talked about the witnesses. I just wanted to talk about in terms of the question about rape, because this comes up quite a lot, that in Islam, that that this really goes against the women, because there needs to be 4 witnesses, and what the argument is that how do you expect there to be 4 witnesses really, that men are getting away with raping women and they are not actually punished. So what is the Islamic concept when it comes to rape and when it comes to 4 witnesses?
First of all, these rulings are not gender specific. So if a man gets raped, the ruling would be the same. Where if a woman gets raped, they can both get raped. But the second thing is that the ruling of 4 witnesses is not about rape. It's about zina. It's about fornication.
Right.
So if somebody fornicates, cheats on their wife, or has sex outside marriage, then the Quran requires 4 witnesses who actually observe the act, and these witnesses need to be upright as well. It's not practically impossible to occur. That's why never in our history has punishment been established that way, by 4 witnesses actually seeing the act of zina, upright witnesses. It would have to be in something done in public for it to happen.
I think what people argue, Sheikh, is that if
people
a
are confusing
woman,
zina and rape. They're not the same. The rulings are not the same.
okay, what
So
the argument?
There's a hadith where a woman, she was actually molested sexually by somebody, and the Prophet said, "Who did it?" And she said, "That guy over there," and they grabbed him immediately. So there were no 4 witnesses there in that hadith. The hadith is sahih as well. So with rape, there's that physical attack as well, harm involved, which doesn't require 4 witnesses whatsoever. So we're confusing zina with rape here.
So what you're saying then is, if someone is accused of doing zina, for that there needs to be 4 witnesses to prove that he has committed the act of zina. But when it comes to rape, if a female or a male said, "I have been raped," and there is a witness, you don't need 4 witnesses. If there's any proof to support that whoever has raped this person, then 1 witness is enough, or the evidence in itself is enough, whether it's DNA now or whatever. You don't need 4 witnesses to prove rape. Is that what you're
exactly? There'll be a due process, and the courts will decipher that. And by the way, rape cases are very, very difficult to prove. In the secular world, you're talking less than 10%. I've spoken to solicitors and counselors, and they say it's less. It's a very small number that actually get convicted for rape.
Yeah, and in rape as well, when it comes to marriage, is there such thing as rape within the marriage? Because some people argue that a husband cannot say no to her husband. So a wife cannot say no to a husband when it comes to sex within the marriage. Or vice versa. So is there a concept of rape in Islam, in the marriage?
Not that I've come across personally. So this is a issue that differs from country to country. So some countries they now have rape within marriage. Other countries, they say no, there is no rape within marriage.
It's an issue of consent, isn't it?
There's an issue of physical harm, which is not permitted whatsoever.
But surely, as a Muslim, you need to get consent from your wife before you perform any kind of sexual act. Surely, isn't that the Islamic understanding as well?
Allahu alam. You cannot cause harm to your wife. Okay.
But Brother Saji, when you got
physical harm to your wife, you cannot cause harm to your wife sexually. The books mention this clearly. If the wife is ill, and she's unable to handle sexual intercourse, it's prohibited for the man to have it. Or he's a large guy and she's smaller. This is what they mention. It's not permitted for him to have sexual intercourse with her if it causes harm. So if there's any harm involved, that is not permitted in the religion whatsoever.
Okay, Jazakallah. And one of the questions that comes up quite a lot, Sheikh, is that the Quran, the Islam promotes the beating up of the wife, that they're allowed to hit them, they're allowed to slap them, and they use some words in the Quran to say that you can discipline them and you can beat them. And if you could answer that one, please.
Yeah, so these verses they've been mistranslated quite poorly, in some translations of the Quran. So they've translated this verse as beat, whereas the word daraba in Arabic, it doesn't always mean beat. It just means the coming together of two things. So it could be a strike or a spank. But in any case, there is a process, of those verses. So the Quran mentions, if a woman is being rebellious to her husband, then he should avoid talking to her. And then if she continues, then he should avoid sharing the same bed with her. And and then it speaks about that striking or spanking. But in Islam, it is not permitted, like we said, to cause any type of physical harm. So the ulama, they mention about this verse that it's darabun ghayru mubarrih. So it's like a spanking that doesn't cause any harm to the wife. It doesn't cause any physical injury to the wife. And again, this is in that context of their time, of what would be appropriate in that time. Okay, it doesn't mean that it's appropriate for us to do it in our time.
So for us today,
the Prophet says, "I do not hit your wives." There's numerous hadiths where the Prophet says that explicitly, sound ones. So it needs to be understood in either context of that culture at that time, and
so for people who follow Islam today, So for people who are watching this show, the message that you're giving is that if we understand the context that the Prophet had advised in many hadiths, do not hit your wives, be kind, because the Prophet said, that the best amongst you is the one who is best to his wives, and I am the best amongst my wives. So are we saying that Islam in no way, shape, or form allows wife beating in any way, shape, or form?
Absolutely.
And I know you're short of time, and really these issues need to be discussed, in a lot more detail. But because I'm short of time, I just want to go on to the next, the next question on this. And one big allegation here is that Islam promotes or allows child brides, where it allows an adult to marry a child. And one of the allegations thrown here is that the Prophet himself married a child. So if you want to kind of touch on that, if that's okay.
Again, we can't judge. Again, it goes back to the context of the time and the culture. In medieval times, it was perfectly fine for an adult to get married to a child, especially if he was a leader of a tribe or a king. One of the kings of England, he married his own cousin who was at the age of 7. And so, it goes back to that context of the time. And we can't judge a people's based on the dictates of our own time. And funnily enough, do you know where the most child marriages occur? In the USA.
Okay.
And so in some states in the USA, a man can go to the parents of a baby, and if the parents are happy, he can get married to that baby, and that's it. Enshrined in some law in the states of the US.
So from the understanding from the scholars that you've studied with and from other scholars, is it permissible today for an adult to marry a child?
Every country will have its own laws.
In Islam, so within the Islamic context, from what the Quran and Sunnah teaches, would you say that does Islam promote or condone that kind of behavior?
It just depends on the context. It is permitted in general, and not to mention it in the Quran, that it is something that is fine in general. But what I'm saying to you is
marrying children is fine in general.
Yeah, it's fine in general, but it shouldn't be something that is frowned on, because it's.
But it should be frowned upon, surely. It should be frowned upon.
Why should it be frowned upon when the kings of England have done it and nobody frowned upon it 300 years ago? So this issue has only become an issue in the past 50 years.
So are you saying that
it was never ever frowned upon historically because that was the culture of that time?
Okay. But the time
now,
yeah.
Different countries, they will have different ages of consent. So in Turkey, it's 18. In Tunisia, it's 21, actually. In Spain, it's 14. Okay. Like I said, in the US, child marriage is legal in some states in the US. What do you have to say about that?
Okay. Yeah, but
Okay.
for us, we live our lives according to the teachings of Islam. We follow the life of the Prophet ﷺ. Our guidance is the manual of the Quran. But if we're saying that child marriage is normal, that to me seems a bit contradictory to a lot of the teachings of the Quran.
What do you think, Brother
You
Naseem?
have to follow the laws of the land of whatever country you're in. Even Muslim countries, they won't allow it because that's enshrined in the laws of those Muslim countries. Okay. Just because something is permitted in Islam doesn't mean that you can you should go and do it, or that it's appropriate for you to go and do it at that time.
Okay, Jazakallah. But then let me bring you into that as
People
well.
are going to be hypocrites and say this is what Islam says when it's in the law of your own countries as well.
Okay, Jazakallah.
But Sheikh Bilal, that's a great point that you make about America, because very few people know that. There are states in America where you can marry anything you want.
Yeah, there's no age limits in some states with parental consent. So if the parents give consent, there is no age limit in many states in the US.
Brother Naseem, what do you say about this
of
one?
them actually.
Okay. What do I say?
Yeah.
What do I say is that we live in the United Kingdom. The consent age of marriage in this country is 16 with parental consent.
It's 17 actually.
17, sorry.
16
17.
in Scotland. So
it
actually differs.
Right.
For marriage, it's different. For sexual intercourse, it's 16, but for marriage, it's a bit higher.
So the issue for me, which I find difficult to compute, is that you can have sex at the age of 16, but you can't get married.
Can't get married, yeah.
Right? It's nonsensical. It's absolutely nonsensical. So hang on, I want to marry this woman. I want to abide by the rules and regulations. I want this to be my responsibility, so that if we have children and I'm going to look after her, look after my offspring, but the law prohibits me to do that. But I can have sex with her and have as many children as I want. So what is that promoting? Number one. Number two,
I think I was reading it as well in Nigeria as well. The age of sexual consent is 14, but for marriage it was 18.
18.
So
right.
it's like you can have sex outside of marriage between 14 to 18, but
it just doesn't make it.
It's very, very strange. If you actually look into it more, you'll be shocked.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in this country, if you have parental consent, what we are saying is that you need parental consent at the age of 17 and get married. That's absolutely fine. However, Islamically, if we were living in an Islamic country, that age of consent could be right down to the age of 10 or 11 or 12. Again, it's obviously all marriages at that age were done with parental consent.
So are we saying that the bottom line is the age of consent of that country? And that can vary, as Shaykh Bilal said, from different ages. And that's what we need to go according to. Yes.
Obviously, of course.
Yeah. And
Islam has not set any age limit. Okay.
Right.
The Quran has not set any age limit. The Hadith has not set any age limit. Okay.
It's for us to decide. It's for us to decide as a country in terms of what and how we determine that law to be passed and governed in accordance to the rules, the regulations, the needs of that society.
Yeah, very good answer.
You have to remember that these laws were brought in because women were getting exploited.
Yes,
in those societies, women were getting abused in those societies and exploited, and that's why they brought these ages.
My only concern here, Shaykh Bilal, is issue of safeguarding. Okay, and what I mean by that is this: you could have a 40, 56-year-old guy going to Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, Syria, whatever. Yeah, I want to marry a 9-year-old. Okay, does that to anyone? Are you telling me that 9-year-old has given consent? Just because she reaches the age of puberty? Does she really want to marry a guy who is about 51 years older than her? Does she really have a say in what she's saying? That people would say
Sajid, and I don't know why you mentioned Bangladesh when you can go to Delaware in the United States and do the same thing.
Yeah.
Taiwan. Made in Taiwan.
You can go to Taiwan and do it. It's nothing to do with Muslim countries.
Okay.
Good point.
What's your next question?
Absolutely. This is the thing, you see. When you look at a 50-year-old man, somebody who's 50 years old came to ask, if he comes to ask for my daughter's hand in marriage, and my daughter is 9, surely the responsibility lies with me as her wali to make sure that I do all my jurisprudence and all the due diligence, etc., etc. Surely, right? If that's an irresponsibility upon me, then you can't blame Islam for that.
But if Sheikh's saying that there's no age limit, then people will blame Islam for that. Why is there no age limit?
Well, there is a lot more countries that are not Muslim countries where the age limit is right down to the age of 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 than there is Muslim countries. Muslim countries are probably the ones who actually adhere to the age limit.
Yeah, the Muslim countries are strict. So
Jazakallah.
it
Yeah.
depends on culture and the context and whatnot.
Like I said, I wish we had more time. So my apologies, Shaykh Bilal. I just wanted to go on to the other question we've got about family planning. They were saying that family planning, is that something within the teachings of Islam, or is that something that's a taboo or not permissible?
If the couple agree, that's fine. It's better, if they have more children. The Prophet said, "I'll get married and have children because I'll boast with you boast about you on the day of judgment because of the number of my followers." But if the husband and wife agree to have a smaller family, that's perfectly fine, and they can use legitimate forms of contraception.
Okay.
Non-permanent forms, temporary forms of contraception.
And just one other point as well, Sheikh, that's come up here is about, this comes up quite a lot in the media as well, and they will take advantage of it, is when it comes to female genital mutilation. Okay, where they're saying that
we don't have time to go into that. It's another nuanced topic.
Is that not a simple no? From your understanding, is that something? Surely it's a no in Islam when you say there's not much time.
We need to talk about it in another topic, maybe in an individual show.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No problem. That's fine.
What they're calling female genital mutilation is broader terms, and there are women who pay to get this. They call it designer vaginas. The women who pay to get these things done. And that's okay.
But we're not talking about the ones who are saying that
causing harm is not permitted in our religion. Simple rule. It's a simple rule that all of us, to cause harm to somebody is not allowed in our religion. The religion came to remove all harm.
That's why I thought it would be a simple answer that surely you can't. Go on, Zaid.
I don't think from what Sheikh's saying, I understand his point. It's not a straightforward answer because there's different facets of it. The one where it's causing direct pain to somebody and it's being forced on, that might be the simple answer. Yeah. But there are other reasons for it as well.
That's right.
And what the Sheikh mentioned there about cosmetic parts of it, there's nothing illegal about that.
Okay, exactly.
People are changing their gender, Sajid. Kids, children, pumping them full of hormones, and they're lying to change their gender and undergo surgery and all of these things.
Without consent,
outcry, without parental consent as well.
Yeah, precisely.
Okay.
And
in fact, have you got any more time, Shaykh Bilal?
I need to go. Sorry, inshallah.
Okay, exactly. Well, thank you very much for your time. And my apologies, some of the questions are a bit rushed, but Jazakallah khair, inshallah we'll get you again. If not in Ramadan now, but inshallah definitely after the month of Ramadan.
Jazakallah, thanks very much, Shaykh Bilal. Yeah, Eid Mubarak, we don't see you, yeah. And no more slide tackling Brother Manaza when you see him.
Oh, he does rugby tackles, him, not slide tackles.
Yeah, he's becoming a vegetarian, by the way, Sheikh.
MashaAllah.
Yeah. He said he's
fried the chicken. Tell him we'll see him after lockdown, inshallah, on the pitch.
Inshallah. Yeah. Okay, my brother. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi
wa barakatuh.
So.
Yeah, then there were 3. This misconception one, Brother Sajid, yeah? There's loads of stuff there that you can really expand on. That last one about FMG? You think it's just, FGM, sorry, not FMG. That's something completely different. That, yeah? You think that it could just be, well, no, it's haram. Yeah? But it's a lot more than what you think because it is one of those where if we get a chance, we could open that question up a lot because it needs to be understood. And and what is wrong about it needs to be really highlighted. What the haram
What we have to understand, Brother Zahid, what we have to understand is there is going to be a time when even circumcision is going to be frowned upon. Circumcision for male. Now, this is the time where circumcision for men is going to be frowned upon. There's going to be a time, or there is already a time, when marriages are actually frowned upon, yet adultery or having sexual relationships at very young ages is actually encouraged.
Exactly.
So fitna and adultery and zina is actually encouraged, and marriages are trying to be controlled. So when you look at things aren't as simple as yes and no sometimes. And I totally agree with Sheikh, where to be honest, and that when you've got FGM forcefully done without consent is haram, because he said that harming somebody, and without their consent is completely forbidden in Islam. However, there are many people who actually have the FGM procedure done because it's something that is seen upon as very cool. There are various reasons for it to be done, and they pay for having it done. So we have to also allow. Yeah. Islam allows flexibility.
Okay, Jazakallah. And I think we had a few other questions. I don't think Shaykh Bilal, and now we've got the Grand Mufti Shaykh Waseem in now, who can answer that one, inshallah. Someone asked a question about, are we allowed to see a mental health professional? If we are going to a mental health professional, are we disregarding Islam? Are we not? Are we lacking faith in Islam? What would you say to that?
That's like saying my carburetor in my car's broken down and I'm going to open the manual of life and read it and try and fix it. Or it's going to fix itself because I'm going to read Qul A'udhu bi Rabbin Nas and blow on it. Come on. This is a logical deen. This is absolutely the deen of common sense. In fact, Allah Rabbul Alameen goes further than that. This is the deen of those people who contemplate, who ponder, who actually go and investigate. So all those things put into place, it would make logical sense to go to a mechanic to have my car seen to, right?
Yeah.
And then pray to Allah Rabbul Alameen that this mechanic, that the shifa of my car will be brought through this mechanic, and I don't have any more.
I do shifa that my car gets fixed when it goes to see Brother Nasr at A&S.
Yeah,
I do loads of shifa. I don't even do shifa. I can get my car back the same day, but he's never given it me back.
So to answer your question, Brother Sajid, it's actually a very acute narrative to have, to say that if I've got a mental health issue is not something which is fabricated. It's not something that's been coined. It really does exist. It really does. Depression, tension, all these things that we used to call it before, they actually do exist. Now, if they exist and Allah Rabbul Alameen recognizes that they exist, then even Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, having tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the man asked him about the 4 legs. How many legs does your camel have? Nabi sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam got down and said, he counted them and said it's got 4 legs. Because this is having conviction in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is not taking away your conviction. This is having tawakkul in Allah. So when a specialist, a sheikh of the Quran, a sheikh of Hadith, may not be a sheikh of mental health as well. So you need to go to the sheikh of the mental health department to be able to understand this mental state of mind.
I think it's just like if you got any physical health problem, you go to a doctor, don't you? You go to a GP, you got a heart problem, you go to a cardiologist or whatever. And I think this is more of a taboo, where people, rather, if they've got a mental health issue, rather than going to a professional, going to a therapist or a counselor, they would, want to get at taweez, go to a sheikh and get dua done, and I think.
Did you know that Nabi sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam was the best mental health practitioner? Best mental health practitioner. In fact, if you read the stories of the Sahaba, how they had issues, how they had concerns, and how the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam addressed those issues, giving simple advice, changing courses, diverting their attention from one thing to another. This is all about the process of dealing with mental health. And alhamdulillah, he did it beautifully.
Okay, yeah, fantastic. And all I would say, obviously, for those who know me, is if you have a mental health problem, go to your GP. You got a mental health problem, get a diagnosis, find a therapist. Inshallah. If you're not sure, all I would say, if you just recognize the signs. If you're worrying, if you're overthinking, if you can't make a decision, if you're always on edge, if you're behaving in the way that you wouldn't normally behave, if you are losing your temper, if you are feeling panicky, etc., etc. These signs. There might be anxiety, there might be low mood, there might be stress. Then recognize that, and if you know that you are behaving differently to what you would normally behave, or your personality has changed, then speak to your doctor. He will do a diagnosis.
And after you've been through some therapy with a trained counselor like yourself, with such, it might be that that mental health wasn't the issue; it was something else. Okay, but you need to go through. Yeah, you need to go through that elimination process, inshallah.
Okay, but there's
Well, just to end on that, when you've gone through that process, so you've tried the Quran and you're going for professional help, and you find out that there's lots of other issues, but the one thing you will find out is that Bir Saab in Pakistan didn't do any taweez on you, and you didn't need it in the first place, so you can cancel your direct debit to make me your open bank account, birsaab.com. That's not required anymore.
There's a verse in the Quran about tawakkul of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I am Razak. I am Razak. I am the provider of sustenance, and I will provide for you from where you never imagined. Okay? Does that mean you stop working? Does that mean you hand in your notice tomorrow and say, I'm going to sit at home? I'm going to sit at home because Allah Rabbul Alameen has told me categorically in the Quran that I am Razak and I will provide for me sustenance from where I never expected. Does that mean that? No, that's suicide, right? Come on, have some logic.
Yeah.
No, Jazakallah. Okay, I think to try to summarize this show, I think what we've tried to do today is erase some of the misconceptions. Some of them were rushed as well. So, but inshallah, the idea is: does Islam promote hatred? Does it promote violence? Does it promote acts of terrorism? Is ISIS, is that Islamic? In terms of rights of women, the rights of divorce, the rights of does Islam allow the husband or to be the wife and vice versa? In terms of inheritance, in terms of the other rights that we talked about. Now, I think there's a lot more that we could have gone into. But do you have any more text message you want to give, and then we'll try to summarize it, inshallah?
There was a couple of text messages that were banging on about sectarianism, and what they were doing is they were saying that we don't like to go down this route where people say that Sunnis are right, Shias are wrong. It's not really what we do, because that is all sectarianism. There was a lot of misconceptions around there. Can we read namaz behind? Who can you read your namaz behind? That was the misconception, yeah? I always say this, and it's one that I've said a number of times. I'll quickly say it to you. My father, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him, was the Emir of the UK, the Tabligh Jamaat in Weymouth in Oldham. He was the actual Emir for this area. My uncle, Feroz, who's still here with us, with the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, was the Emir of the UK Islamic Mission. One day, I'm on my way to the UK Islamic Mission. Why? Because there was a pool table there. So I thought, right, better go there. Better start reading namaz there. And somebody stopped me. Where are you going? So go read namaz. They ran straight to my dad. Oh, Haji Saab, your son, you're not going to believe what he did. What? Did he drink alcohol? No. Did he go, has he got a girlfriend? No. Has he started smoking? No. He's gone and read namaz at the uncle's mosque. My dad said, listen, if he's gone reading namaz, there'll be a time when people don't read namaz. Whatever you can read namaz, read that. Don't use an example, and do not hide behind, I don't know what this person's like, so I'm not going to read namaz. So it's a little blast that I say to people who concentrate their efforts on creating division in their own mind as a justification of not reading their salah. So,
You know,
Sajid.
brother Zahid, today we've had a really, really entertaining day. To be honest, I've had hundreds of calls. You know, well, maybe not hundreds, but hundreds throughout the month, definitely. Different people have called about this sectarian issue, etc. And we're arguing. People are texting me as well. You know, what day is Eid? Are we going to have 2 Eids and this and that and everything? Now, these brothers and sisters who've been texting in, a lot of them, in fact, majority of them, I know very well, they don't even pray fard. They probably didn't even fast. In fact, majority of them didn't. But the argument about this Eid, oh my God, brother, you should do something. They banned Eid Salah, they banned Eid Namaz in the masjid. You know, the kind of tension that they're in about reading Eid and really, really adamant about reading Eid and making sure that the mullahs get it right and we all do Eid together is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. They don't read Farz. They don't read Jummah. They don't fast. They probably haven't prayed their zakat. What's going on? You know, we've got our priorities all wrong. Now,
and look at the other. Sorry, brother Naseem. Look at the other terrible thing that's happened. We can't even hire our cars. What's going to happen to all those rusted Lamborghinis?
You know, on this issue.
Dr. Evil, they might be calling you up, asking you whether they can borrow your car for a short spin.
If I can, you know, in terms of this division, I think it's misunderstood highly. You know, the division, we call it sectarianism, or we call it different opinions. One thing that we have to be very, very clear on, right? Fiqh, and Brother Zaid, I love it when you say that I'm fiqh enough, you know, but don't need fiqh. I'm fiqh enough. Fiqh.
Well, if you look at my belly, that's pretty thick at the moment.
Fiqh, my brothers and sisters who are listening, inshallah ta'ala, fiqh is jurisprudence, right? This is a debate done by scholars, the fuqaha, right? This is a debate done by scholars on things that are permissible, always. So basically, that means that there is a flexibility in the deen where you can achieve the same thing or do the same thing, but in 2 different ways, and both are correct. For the normal lay person, it's a nonsensical argument. It's stupid. It's a stupid debate. Does that make sense? So
yeah.
We're arguing about eating roti on this dining table or on the floor. Both items are permissible, totally.
We're arguing about whether we can drink our water stood up or we have to squat down.
That's what I'm saying. So it's not a debate. It's not a permissibility issue. It's things that are done differently, but the same thing is achieved. I.e., you know, am I allowed to eat roast leg, or do I have to steam it in a particular way? Come on, they're both okay.
I think I think we will be going into some of this tomorrow, inshallah. Tomorrow we will be talking about what are the lessons that we've learned from the month of Ramadan that we can take away. Secondly, Eid. Some of the things we're talking about now. How should we celebrate it now, especially in the lockdown? We can't go to Eid Salah, we can't go anywhere. How should we celebrate it? And then, you know, life after Ramadan. So are we going to go back to our own selves, or is there something that has changed inside us? What are the lessons that we can take?
Inshallah, yeah.
Inshallah, that's what we'll go into tomorrow. So any final comments, Brother Naseem?
Yeah, there is no such thing as sectarianism in Islam. There is no sects in Islam. Surah An-Nam, verse 159, amongst many others, but specifically on this sectarianism, Surah An-Nam, verse 159, and it's the 6th chapter of the Quran. 6th chapter. Read that verse. Read the verses before it and read the verses after it. Sectarianism is haram in Islam. You have been named Muslims. Allah Rabbul Alameen named you Muslims. So that is the best of names. So let's stick to that, inshallah.
Yeah.
There is no sect in Islam, but there is sex in Islam if you are married. Okay? So, differences.
I'm going to make Saj, was that are you trying to take up my role there? I'm the one who comes out with it.
You know what? You know, but that day when you were here, when you were here, someone sent me a text message. I cracked the joke and it wasn't very funny. And someone said to me, "Why don't you just leave the jokes to Zahid? You just have to see his questions." I would do, but he's not here.
But anyway, Zahid sent you that message.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, Saj's trying to be a filthy fic.
Filthy fic. I'm all right. I'm picking up, mate.
Yeah, but does Zahid any comments for himself?
No, Jazakallah. You know, these shows, they're brilliant. And I think Shaykh Waseem, Shaykh Bilal, it was incredible. We just wish we had a bit more time with them because of these, the commitments and everything. What I am seeing, and today I was out and about, is that there is a lot of demand for this. as it grows. I think organically, if the show can grow outside of Ramadan, and this platform that brother Naseem has found through StreamYard may be our perfect solution, rather than let's go here, let's get video cameras. This is perfect. If we can get a show out from there, I think that we can build on it, because some of our shows in terms of internet numbers on YouTube, it doesn't look brilliant. I don't know what it's like on Facebook, but you got to remember this. We started with no advertising. We're also starting on the hop. We're not building on it. If we build on it, I think that there's definitely... Today, where I went out, and some of the younger guys would say, we pick up a lot of stuff. There's one person with a phone, and 8 or 9 people are listening to it. Or they're sat, at home, and they've got an iPad on, and maybe 8 or 9 people come in and out of the office, in and out of their rooms. But what we would say to all of those brothers and all those sisters is, look, go on to our YouTube and subscribe, because if we can build up numbers, it'll give us a bit more hope that we can move this thing forward. And more importantly, we can go to some of the major scholars and say, look, there's a demand, we've got listenership, and they can then say, well, actually, yeah, you have, and we can commit ourselves time as well. So we'll be here at what time? 11? Is it tomorrow? Or is it after?
Tomorrow, half 10 tomorrow, inshallah.
Inshallah, yeah.
And
Okay.
tomorrow we have Sheikh Harun Hanif, your best mate, Zaid. And we also have Mufti Atiq Rahman, who'll be here about 11:30 tomorrow as well, inshallah.
Great. Until tomorrow.
Yeah, Jazakallah.
Yeah. And just last thing. Lots of people are sending these questions with regards to our Eid Namaz, and somebody said that a certain mosque was going to open up, but somebody grassed him up, and he can't now open up the mosque. There are.
Chori.
Yeah, they grassed him up, man. Grassed him. He was gonna do it.
Chori.
He was just gonna quickly do Allahu Akbar, and then we could have just done one. But he's grassed. There are a community in the UK who are just not bothered, and I'll name it. That's the Jewish community. I travel around there. They're not bothered, and rumour is some of the synagogue, but you won't see a word of that on the media. If one mosque even changes a notice on the front and opens that front door and does something, that's it. The media will go wild, thinking it's the Muslimics again trying to spread COVID-20.
From Muslim.
Yeah, from Muslimistan, which is the capital of halal burger. Yeah. So for those people who don't get to listen to any of our other shows or watch our other shows, we got a very simple thing, and that was, do we read Eid Namaz at home? Now, if you follow the Hanafi fiqh, as far as that method is concerned, you don't read it. There is no namaz. What you can do, you can read the namaz at home. You can read Zohar together, and you can also read, I think, is it 4 rakats in the same?
You can read 4 rakat, 2 nafals. Yeah.
So is it 2 and 2, or is it 4 together?
Yeah, 2 and 2. What you do is there's the talabiyah, or the takbir as we call it. Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Walillahi alhamd. This is something we should recite continuously throughout the Eid day. After every fard salah, we should be reading that, reciting that. Now, I always say, and Brother Sajj, and you guys have heard me many a time, a family that prays together stays together. Alhamdulillah. So what you do is you do Jama'ah with your family, and you recite this after every single fard salah. Whether you read Eid, or whether you read Nafal, whether you read Sunnah, whether you read Two, it doesn't matter. It's not something you're going to be held accountable for. My brothers, my sisters who are listening out there, please don't force your young ones to read Eid Salah. It's not compulsory. Don't compensate the compulsory over the nawafil.
I've got one last, Jazakallah, Brother Naseem. I've got one last text message from my good friend, Brother Bilal from Tissue Direct. One thing I will say before I read this out is a lot of people yanked up prices. This brother didn't. So whilst there was this horrible, what's still going on, and there were shortages of everything, he could have easily ranked up prices, but he didn't. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give him big reward for that, because he was open, he was serving his community with the same prices before the event. And we know, people were selling tissue paper online. So it says here, Really good show tonight, mashallah. People care about sex so much they forget to be decent Muslims first. The girl who got shot in Blackburn the other day, she had no, she had a GoFund page set up in her name so that she can do some sadaqah for her. People found out she was Shia and asked for the money back.
Yeah.
Look at this hate, yeah? You know, whether she's Shia, this, that, the other, you know, should anybody be killed in the holy month of Ramzan who's an innocent bystander when probably the cause of the bullet rifle will be something to do with some drug lord or some drug war going on, which is also haram. So you're quite right, brother Bilal. And, you know, once again, a big salam out to you. And, you know, you kept those prices right. I know I'm going on about it, but a lot of people didn't. And lots of people are struggling financially. And simple things like tissue paper, toilet roll, things like that, they are necessities. And for you, subhanAllah, may Allah put a lot of barakat in your work. All the guys who sent us text messages, Brother Pips and Aziz from Exec Barbers, big salam going out to you. So keep us in your prayers. Keep your prayer steadfast. Make sure that you're making the month of Ramadan. Tomorrow is Jummah al-Wida. It is the last Jummah in this blessed and most sacred of month. We do not know whether Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless us, make us fortunate enough to be here next year. We don't know whether we will say one day of Ramadan next year or whether there'll be another reason why we're at home. Those people at home who carried out their fard namaz, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you between 70 to 700,000. Who knows what the bounty is. So tomorrow, guys, don't get wrapped up with the Shaykh internet about do we read namaz, do we read this, how many. You know, it's very simple. Make the decision, but don't forget your fard. And give charity. Once you've given it for your intention, do not revoke it back. Don't say, oh, I found out this person was this. If you're given the intention, I do. I know some people say, no, I've got to see it through to the end, but that's up to them. Once I've given my charity, I've made my intention, I never look back. Give charity. Make sure you help people locally. That is the way of Islam. And until tomorrow, I say to everybody else out there, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا